Good evening and thank you for joining us. The COVID-19 situation in Thunder Bay is only expected to get worse over the coming weeks, according to the district's medical officer of health. Dr. Janet DeMille is expecting the surge to peak by the end of the month. The health unit will soon ramp up vaccination clinics to counter the spread with a focus on the youngest eligible population. Corey Nordstrom explains.
We have a lot of COVID-19 in Thunder Bay. We have more right now than we did at any other point in time in the pandemic.
Though it's now harder to get an accurate reading on active case numbers, DeMille is confident local cases are still rising daily. The Thunder Bay District is also reportedly seeing more outbreaks and higher rates of hospitalization than some of the worst times since the pandemic started. And the medical officer of health is expecting things to worsen over the coming weeks.
I'm hoping that we will peak sometime in January, maybe by the end of January or at least early February, and then we'll start to recover with less outbreaks, lower numbers overall, but it will take another, 4 to 6 weeks to sort of recover for that.
In efforts to control the spread of the virus, more vaccine clinics at the CLE's Heritage Building will run from the 21st until February 11th, a main focus being the 5 to 11 age group. Just 50% of those children are vaccinated against COVID-19 at this point, and DeMille is hoping more will get the shot after the group saw just a 1.6 increase in uptake last week.
It sort of slowed down and as we approached 50, and now I think there was a little bit of an uptick recently, but certainly that does suggest that a lot of parents are out there that haven't chosen to get their kids immunized.
And by getting children in the youngest eligible range vaccinated, they're protecting the rest of the family, including those under 5.
One of the age groups that I'm particularly concerned about is those individuals 0 to 4 who aren't eligible for immunization. And I know that many kids 5 to 11 may have siblings who are not eligible to be vaccinated.
DeMille says it's best that kids get back to the classroom, though she knows there will be complications and warns that canceled classes and school closures are a possibility. The Lakehead Board has announced that canceled classes will be treated similarly to snow days, with notifications on the school's social media the night prior or the morning of a cancellation. Corey Nordstrom, TVT News.
The number of COVID-19 patients at the Regional Health Sciences Center has gone down over the last 24 hours, but unfortunately there are now more COVID patients in the ICU.
The center is now caring for 24 COVID-positive patients. That's down from 28 on Wednesday. But the number of those patients in the ICU has jumped from 2 up to 5. Overall hospital occupancy stands at just over 98%, and ICU occupancy, which includes non-COVID ICU patients, has fallen below 73%. On Wednesday, that number stood at nearly 82%. As for the number of new COVID cases, the Thunder Bay District Health Unit is reporting 106 new infections, bringing the number of known active cases to 365. 2 of the new hospitalizations come from the TBDHU's catchment area, with 13 people currently in hospital. The Northwestern Health Unit is reporting 55 new cases. There are now 352 active cases being reported across its catchment area. There's also 1 new hospitalization in that part of the region, bringing the current total to 9.
Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health says it's not for sure that restrictions in this province will end on January 26. That coming from Dr. Kieran Moore during an update today. Meanwhile, school boards across the province are scrambling to implement Ontario's back-to-school plan ahead of Monday's return. Colin DeMello has the details.
With days to go until students return to the classroom, school boards are still scrambling to put together plans for the reopening.
We're trying to do the best we can under extremely tight timelines. We're hoping to get a plan out to parents as soon as possible so they know what's going on next Monday as well, to try to make sure that everyone is prepared going into Monday.
But some in the education sector are raising grave concern with the plans put together by the Ford government, which will no longer track COVID-19 in schools and instead focus on absenteeism. The Dufferin-Peel Catholic School Board wrote a letter to the Minister of Education saying the reliance on absences as a possible indicator of COVID cases among students and staff lacks the transparency of the system that has worked well and maintained public confidence throughout the pandemic. Do you believe personally that a parent deserves to know that COVID-19 is in their child's classroom?
The assumption in the question is that we're going to be testing every citizen who has symptoms. I think it's critical parents have metrics they can depend on. Parents will be able to know on the Ontario.ca website on a daily basis absenteeism by students and by staff.
The government says that's in line with other provinces as well. But now, school boards say they're looking at ways to fill in the information gaps, giving parents a window into what's happening inside the classroom.
We do recognize that parents really want to know. And so what we are taking a look at is when there is a confirmed case that's reported to the principal, that we will let that cohort know, so that classroom know out of courtesy to try to make sure the parents are aware.
The government's political critics say the education confusion could have been avoided.
It is just unbelievable that here we are again, within a couple of days of the schools literally unlocking their doors to welcome students back, and everybody's in a scramble to try to figure out how to do that safely because Doug Ford didn't bother.
But once schools open, all eyes will be on the economy. Dr. Kieran Moore says with the record hospitalizations, the province needs to be cautious, and reopening too quickly could trigger another wave.
I'm looking for a plateau and a peak, and then we want to slowly and cautiously remove public health measures so that we don't have a rebound in cases coming into our hospital system.
The restrictions are slated to be lifted on January 26th. But today, Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health sounded hesitant.
Early in the week, we should be able to get clarity on where we're at. And as soon as we have clarity, we want to inform the business community. So I can't guarantee the 26th. Please stay tuned.
Dr. Moore says once again, it'll be a staged reopening, with large public gatherings being the last to return.
Dr. Moore added today that immunocompromised Ontarians will be eligible for a fourth dose come tomorrow, assuming that it's been at least 84 days since they received their third dose. Well, the Ford government announced an investment today of $10 million in new annual funding for Ontario Aboriginal Housing Services. That's the agency that originally planned a 58-bed supportive housing facility on Junot Avenue here in Thunder Bay. The chair of the agency welcomes the new funding and says Thunder Bay remains on the organization's priority list for new housing. Mitchell Ringos has more.
The annual funding is hoping to provide Indigenous-led, culturally appropriate long-term housing solutions and support services to Indigenous peoples experiencing or at risk of homelessness. OHAS currently has over 10,000 housing units across Ontario, with several recent projects in Sioux Lookout, Red Lake, and a new one planned for Kenora. Minister of Indigenous Affairs Greg Rickford says unlike some funding that shrinks over time, this money is for the long term.
This is designed to give people like Justin, like Lorna, and like Cora a sense that not only is their government solidly behind them for the indeterminate future, but that the resources are there to provide some of the things that both Minister Clark and Tobolo have brought today.
You know, today's announcement is critical because it, one, not only provides annual funding in order to address critical needs, but it actually has taken that intersectional approach of looking at multiple issues that connect together from different ministries.
Thunder Bay's Coralie McGuire-Sirette is the new chair for OHAS, and she's well aware of the controversy that occurred when the agency tried to build a 58-bed supporting housing facility on Junot Avenue in 2019. The $12 million project ended up being put on hold, following opposition from some city councillors and residents in the area. Sirette points out the majority agreed with the benefits of that project, and if it wasn't for those louder voices opposing, it would already be built.
And it was actually a really small amount of people who didn't want the housing, you know, which For me, it was nice to see that there was so many other, the larger amount of our community actually did want the project. So to me, it does tell me that there is change happening here locally.
No decisions have been made yet as the funding was just released, but CRET says they will look across Ontario into where this funding will make the largest impact, but Thunder Bay is definitely on the priority list. Mitchell Ringos, TBT News.
Thunder Bay Police are reporting a pair of significant drug busts yesterday morning, resulting in 9 arrests. One of the takedowns occurred in the 400 block of North Court Street. City Police and OPP executed a search warrant and found cocaine, fentanyl, and cash. 6 people, including 3 Southern Ontario youths, now face trafficking charges related to that offense. The second bust happened on the 300 block of North Cumberland Street. City Police and OPP entered the home and discovered about $49,000 worth of cocaine, crack cocaine, and oxycodone pills. Officers also seized more than $31,000 in cash. 3 people from Southern Ontario have been charged with drug trafficking. One of the suspects was also charged with stealing a car and running from City Police back in September. Thunder Bay City Council got an update this week from the Police Services Board on key goals and strategies for policing over the next 3 years. The service's newly adopted strategic plan looks to provide a more diverse, trusted, and progressive police force by 2030. The plan was crafted with the help of surveys, both of the public and of officers. Among the priorities for staff, support from management and better police facilities. Members of council had a number of questions for the board. Some referenced a fear of police among segments of the population and asked what changes are needed to rebuild trust. Chief Sylvie Hoth says they need other agencies to step up to allow officers to focus on crime.
Open their minds, be kind of proactive, and really look outside the box to say, how can we as an agency that currently offers service in this box be a true partner with the Thunder Bay Police Service, that we either respond to the calls ourselves as that agency, or we can work hand in hand to come forward with a solution that works.
The service's funding request for a new police headquarters was also brought up. Council will discuss the $56 million project during its budget meetings over the next 3 weeks. The Rainbow Collective of Thunder Bay has partnered with T-Baytel to deliver gender and sexual diversity training sessions to more than 400 employees this winter. Rainbow Collective launched its new GDS certificate program in June. Since then, about 15 local and regional organizations have reached out to learn more. T-Baytel agreed to sponsor the program, which then led to 16 education sessions for all of its employees. T-Baytel spokesperson Jamie Smith says the sensitivity training is especially important for a large local employer like T-Baytel.
It's always important as a person and as a business to be aware and to educate yourself as much as possible to the realities of the people in Northern Ontario. So when this opportunity was presented, we said yes.
Corporations like T-Baytel are taking the lead in using local lived experience and trusting us to do this work with them. So we're more than thrilled today to be here with T-Baytel, and I hope in the future that more organizations in our community reach out to us.
And just making it so that they can serve everybody to the best of their ability. Again, it's not that hard once you have the tools, but you have to have those tools.
As you heard there, Veltri hopes more local companies will reach out to inquire about the gender and sexual diversity training. Staff at Roots to Harvest filled and dropped off 400 breakfast and snack packages today for needy families of kids participating in online learning. With all classes being held virtually this week, Roots to Harvest officials wanted to help out those in need of food support. These breakfast and snack bags contain essentials like cereal, yogurt, applesauce, and bread. Families were able to pick up the packages at 10 different locations across the city this afternoon. Roots to Harvest has been making the food packages since 2020. At first as an emergency response measure at the start of the pandemic, now they're catered specifically to online students.
I'd say it's quite important. The students get breakfast and lunch, or snacks anyways, at schools. So by not having that during the day, I think it just is a huge gap for kids who normally would have access to that kind of food in their schools. And so families, I think, are really struggling overall, and this seemed like an area that we could fill.
In the wake of that devastating fire at the Finnish Labor Temple, officials at the Lakehead University Archives are inviting people to send in historic photographs of the iconic building. After seeing all the photos being shared online of the Hoito and the Finlandia Club, LU Archives staff decided to ask members of the public for their pictures, old or new, to create a digital album in memory of the building. LU archivist Sarah Janes says they hope the pictures they get will complement their existing collection of photographs from the Thunder Bay Finnish-Canadian Historical Society, which reflect the earlier years of the temple. Janes says the photos will be preserved for research purposes, and they'll also be available for online viewing.
It reflects the importance of this site to so many people. The building and the history that it stands for, the history that happened there, is really strong in people's memories and people's ways of thinking about the history of Thunder Bay. It really is a key site in the community for culture, for organizing, and so much more.
Anyone who wants to submit their photos or learn more about the project can contact the Lakehead University Archives through its Facebook page or website. Well, Mitchell,